Very welcome along to the football kickoff with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. On the show this week, David Connolly and our own Colm Buig.
The football kickoff
with Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
We are previewing 5 specific fixtures for you that are going to be on TV over the course of the weekend. We're starting with Villa against Everton, BT Sport tomorrow at 12:30, Brentford versus Manchester United, Sky Sports at 5:30. You can make the case that either of those 2 games are going to be the game of the weekend, but we all know they're not really. Forest West Ham, Sky Sports 2 o'clock on Sunday. Richie McCormick and Brian Kerr on commentary duty for us on Off the Ball on that one. And Vinnie Perth is alongside Stephen Doyle for what is absolutely the game of the weekend. It's Chelsea against Spurs, kicks off at 4:30. And then on Monday night, Liverpool, who've already dropped 2 points this season, play Palace at home. Sometimes they've stuffed up against Palace in big games in the past. Not recently, but sometimes they have. That's Monday night at 8 o'clock. And so Colm Buig with me in studio, David Connolly on the line. David, good morning to you. Good afternoon to you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys?
I want to start with Villa because I'm a Villa fan, and we've had a big response to the fact that we're talking about somebody other than Manchester United this week on the show. Is Steven Gerrard a good manager, David? A nice handy question to kick us off here.
I guess if you're obviously a Villa fan, you know that the result, the opening day defeat against a Bournemouth side, I think everybody was looking at as and they still might be relegation contenders, make no mistake, but a lot of headlines, leading up to the game with Tyrone Mings, obviously, and the goals they conceded were pretty bad. You've got to say. I thought Kiefer Moore's one was awful. The marking in the box. Look, it's only the first game of the season, so I don't think we should look too far into it. But to me, I mean, if you're a fan, I saw him live last season, and at times they're really good. At other times, I don't know how he's going to get, the players that he's bought into the same team. I don't know how he's going to get, and maybe he can't. Ings, Watkins, Buendia, Coutinho. I don't know how he's going to get those attacking players on the pitch because he just can't seem to find a way to accommodate them all. So I think he is under a little bit of, I wouldn't say, he's under, he creates his own pressure, right, to do well. But make no mistake, I think these 2 incredible football players probably haven't, certainly got off to the start that they would have wanted, this season. And, there'll be a lot of attention on them. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is the opening day of the season and we shouldn't overreact. However, it's kind of a pattern with how the end of last season finished. Villa were great in some games. Villa were actually brilliant in portions of matches and then terrible in portions of matches. So there's no consistency there. And look, maybe that's because their players aren't good enough to be good for 95 minutes against the top Premier League teams. But you would expect a response in the opening day against a newly promoted team.
Yeah, but look, I guess, if you look at the results across the board, I'd imagine barring the Chelsea one, and this seemed to be the case for even in the Championship, home form counted for a lot. There was a lot of positive victories across all the leagues, really, say Premier League, Championship, League One. Whether that's something that will continue, we don't know. But, the opening day, with the crowd behind you, it was only really Everton that suffered. So, other than that, everyone else got off to a pretty good start. And even Fulham obviously gave Liverpool a real scare, on their home patch. And I guess, they made some good signings in the end, Bournemouth. But, yeah, it was a very slow start from Villa. And I don't know. I mean, he's very abrasive at times, I think, Steven Gerrard. At times, he reminds me a little bit of Roy Keane in terms of how he manages. He's very honest when he comes out in the press and forthright. But I don't know. I just think at times you might need to temper that anyway. But I think that comes from when you're newly finished playing, and then you become a manager. A bit like Roy did. I think your honesty is you've played like that and then you manage like that. But at times, maybe said a little bit too much. I think about Tyrone Mings. In terms of how he took it. How he took the captaincy coming off him. I just wonder whether some of that needed to be said publicly. But anyway, there you go. He almost referenced that he wasn't, he didn't take it in a manner that he would have liked him to, which I think that's maybe a little bit unfair on Tyrone Mings. I don't know.
What would you think the attitude in the changing room is when Mings has been a player who has, literally put his body on the line, has got injured sliding into the post trying to stop goals going in, has come off bleeding in matches and come back on, and has been there as the club has transformed from being, a bit of a basket case to a regular team in the Premier League. How does the changing room respond to Tyrone needs to look me in the eye?
Yes, I mean, I think for when you've been a player like Stephen has, and you're probably and you play the way that he does, I think at times you probably look a little bit too much into. There's other managers in the Premier League. Right? I'd say Graham Potter. You'd very rarely hear him critique his own players, and everything is done in a very soft manner. Very few confrontations. I wouldn't say modern day management is like that, but he seems to be able to. But that's maybe because he hasn't had the career that Stevens had. Maybe the career that Stevens had lends him more towards the brutal honesty at times that you have with players, which it can work, but it can also maybe at times be a little bit too heavy-handed. And I just wonder here with Tyrone. Look, Tyrone Mings will know last season he was at fault. He has made a lot of mistakes. If you're a Villa fan, you would have seen him be out-jumped at times. I'm not going to pin down every mistake he's ever made, right? But
the one thing I agree with you, right? Definitely, there were times last season when he made mistakes, but it was also clear that they didn't really trust him, because when he would get the ball, you could hear them shouting at him to, pass it. Like, it was a real kind of very basic. Look, Tyrone, we don't want you doing anything fancy here, And I think that they probably have telegraphed that they were going to take the captaincy off him and that they're looking for somebody else to replace him. And that's fine, but maybe the thing to do is to sell him as opposed to humiliating him like this.
Yeah, I mean, look, would you have had the captaincy? Would it have been done earlier in pre-season?
Maybe, yeah.
It just seemed, the timing of it seemed to be, the timing of it just seemed to be a little bit strange, but. I don't know. Maybe some of the manner of some of their performances, or would you say the collapse against Man City, did that have anything to do? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to, when you're the manager and you're dealing with the players day in, day out. Obviously, he'd have a bit more to say on that. Although you could say how they played last season, Villa, in their sort of diamond shape to get Buendia and Coutinho on the ball, meant probably Tyrone had to do a lot more defending than he'd probably like to.
Yeah.
It seemed like now they're probably set up a little bit more defensively, although I haven't seen them live, so I can't say. But when you've got, as they did say against Man City, Coutinho, Buendia, they've got the diamond. They're really overloading the top part of the pitch, and those players are not tasked with recovery runs and getting back on the ball. Maybe it might be, you're asking your defenders to defend an awful. You've got Luca Digne bombing down the left. It's a little bit different. And when you're a centre half, you've got to do an awful lot of defending. So, Matty Cash, he bombs on an awful lot. So then your two centre halves are left to do an awful lot of work. So,
just on Mings, being stripped of the captaincy isn't the end of the world. Like Sami Hyypiä was no longer the Liverpool captain because Steven Gerrard was ready to step it up.
Yeah.
Now, you as an Aston Villa fan, Ger, heading into this summer, were you just bursting to say on air, the one thing we need to change is the captaincy at this football club? Were you happy with Tyrone Mings as captain, or was John McGinn, for you, always a better contender?
Is he the second coming of Steven Gerrard? Is that what you're saying?
Is that what does Gerrard see? Does he see that in McGinn?
I don't know.
You remind me of me.
The interesting thing is, Guardiola is now on his, I think, fourth captain in 4 seasons, right? But that is a combination of, I think Gundogan is now, I think, obviously Company. Everyone who seemed to get the captain's armband, Fernandinho, has kind of left, right? Mm-hmm. So it is interesting, the captaincy, because if you've been a captain like Stephen has, you probably put a lot of importance on that role and the type of person you want. And is McGinn, because he's a midfielder, is there any, midfielder like Stephen?
What do you think of actually? Because that Roy Keane places a lot of importance in the role of captaincy. When he was at our roadshow, there was still he was still niggling away at the fact that Kenny Cunningham was the captain when he came back for Ireland when Brian Kerr convinced him to. He actually said something like in passing, but you knew that he thought about it, and it was one of those things. And he always did a little dig at Kenny, although he did sign him, which is a bit weird. But anyway, he seems to place a lot of importance in it, and a lot of importance in it at Manchester United as well. But as you point out, Pep Guardiola, who we would consider to be one of the greatest managers of all time, doesn't really seem to care about it. Who's right?
Well, I think he cares, but I think it's only by default that, Fernandinho doesn't tell him he's going. Oh, right, I need a new captain now. So he's on to his fourth or whatever, and company leaves or retires, and so that's how that's gone a little bit. But I don't know. I think I see a lot of similarities with how Stephen manages to how Roy does, and their personalities. Jordan Henderson is a little bit the same, being a midfielder, engine room. I guess if Jordan played less, what would happen to the captaincy then? Would Klopp, take it off him? Or, as you said, whether Steve needed to make that, but that's his decision, right? It's a big season for him, and if he feels he wasn't getting enough from Tyrone, then it's within his rights. But maybe it could have been done. It could have been done, I think, at the start of pre-season. You come back in. Yeah. I don't think you do it on the eve of the first game.
No, I think it's fair enough.
I feel like Gerrard feels that the captaincy is a vital component of a team, whereas, as David is mentioning, I think Pep Guardiola's like, captain's just one representation of my team.
Have a lot of other
I think so. Yeah. I'm actually delighted that we can rekindle, finally, the greatest football debate of the 21st century, Gerrard or Lampard. David, who would you prefer to be managed by?
I think it's difficult. Look, I have noticed that Stephen reminds me very much as when I played under Roy. His style of management, a lot placed on body language, a lot placed on honesty as a manager, saying things and there's no right or wrong way, but it just reminds me of that. And I would probably warm more to Stephen because I prefer honesty, in that, I prefer that. But out of the two, I'm not saying Frank is dishonest, but it's just, I think you got to be able to manage that. And I think if you can't, I don't think there's any prisoners, which is fine. But I just look at some other managers and how they do things, and I think, they do it in a completely different way and get the same result. He is working on lower points per game than Dean Smith, bear in mind.
Yes,
and that will be rammed down his throat. And how does he get, Danny Ings, who Ollie Watkins, I think is his favourite. How does he get him in the team? Because he's got Danny there. Does one of them play wide? In a 4-3-3, where does Coutinho and Buendia fit in? They probably don't. So he's got a bit of work to do.
It also emerged this week that Luca Dean is on 163 grand a week, which is 8.5 million a year. He's the highest paid player at Villa. When that stuff kind of leaks into the press, you're like, really? Is that what happened there? How did that? What?
Bit of internal jealousy at your beloved.
It was interesting. The captaincy news broke, and then all the players' salaries somehow were made public on a list. It's almost like somebody in the club had a list of them, and it got screenshotted. And I don't know how it happened, but yeah. So,
I mean, look, he's not as if he was not popular. From all intents and purposes, Tyrone was really popular amongst his players. And some managers go, we could take it off him, but the lads like him. That's fine.
Yeah.
And in the end, you can still be a captain of the club, right? You can be club captain, but not play
exactly.
as much,
and there was a way to do that, because by all account, Mings showed up to all the charity gigs and was like pressing the flesh with people, and has got this incredible backstory where he has he's come through real genuine hardship to become a footballer that now represents a city and has played for his country. And you're like, okay. Anyway, look, we spent too much time on this. We're already getting grief from the rest of the fans. Who's going to win this?
Everton. We haven't talked enough about Frank Lampard's style of telling you that you're better than you actually are. The opposite style of management.
Yeah, exactly. I still go with Villa here because, Everton, I don't know, at the minute it looks like they're struggling to score a goal. I really like Anthony Gordon, but he's not a central striker. He was kind of thrown to the wolves last week. I don't know what he was meant to do in Everton's shape. I think there will be a response from Villa. His team selection is really important. but I think it'll be Villa, just.
All right. Brentford versus Manchester United. This game is suddenly very, 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 very interesting. And it's not that there's a lot riding on it. Ten Hag's not going to get sacked or anything, but there will definitely be panic buys galore if they were to lose away to Brentford. What do you expect from Manchester United? What do you expect from Ten Hag? Does he start Ronaldo because he has to? What's going on here, David?
I tell you what, I've got tickets for this game, but I'm working. But nonetheless, my kids are going to go, and it'll be an absolute cracker. So,
in their little Brentford jerseys or in their little Man United jerseys?
No, in their little Brentford jerseys.
Right.
So it's only down the road. I mean, I could walk there. So, but I'm not going to be at the game, unfortunately. But look, United comprehensively beat Brentford last season. However, they've made some good. I mean, Damsgaard's a great signing. They showed character last week to come back from 2-0 down. And, every time you seem to write them off, they're able to sort of go again. They play really good football. I went to their pre-season game against Real Betis, although it was like watching paint dry, because two teams, all they did was pass the ball to death. It was just so boring, I could have left after an hour. But I stuck it out because I had a couple of kids with me. I felt I had to. I think even then, after that, they wouldn't have mind, going after an hour. But the point being, I think they can play both ways, right? But whenever they get the ball into Tony, things happen. The goal they got where Rico Henry looked like he just hit the ball in the box, but it was a much better part. It was a pass into Ivan Toney in the box. Rather than passing the ball to death, if they just got it up to him, and he'll be a foot taller than Martinez, minimum foot taller. And last season against Liverpool, whenever they hit Matip, whenever they hit Tony onto Matt, he won every flick on. He's going to win every flick on again as long as they play direct. And I hope they don't play like they did against Betis, where they passed the ball to death. They get it in the air, get it up against Tony, up against Martinez. I tell you what, it's going to be so intriguing.
There's something in this game for Brentford if they do that, isn't there? This isn't one-way traffic the whole game.
No, absolutely not. Look, United will no doubt have a reaction, but Brighton put 4 past them, in the penultimate game last season. Anyone who thought that Brighton were going to be, a shadow of their former selves without Basuma and Cucurella was shown, hang on a minute, that's how a team or a club buys low, sells high, and continues to be strong, So, no, they're going to give, even without Christian Eriksen, they're going to give it a good go. And obviously he's coming up against his former team. So, it's going to be fascinating. And they've got two, Rico Henry is a brilliant left back. If you'd have told me United are going to sign left back Malacia from Feyenoord, I would have said, well, I tell you what, if there's a better left back than Rico Henry last season that I saw live, not too many.
You're a Man United fan, Colm, just to remind everybody that, just in case anybody's unaware.
Yeah, a Man United fan. Do you know, there are 2 things that Brentford have managed to do this season that Manchester United haven't. Number 1, they've got a point. Number 2, they've successfully managed to sign a player from Bologna, and United haven't. Aaron Hickey, this young fullback, who by all accounts is a very, very, very promising player. And Arnautovic is not coming now because Ten Hag threw the grass up into the air, saw the way the wind was going, and that wind, the grass was actually going to the direction of vitriol by the fans, being like, what are we doing signing this guy? It's like Manchester United are obsessed with recreating Eric Cantona in some way possible. I have to sign this bad boy centre forward who we're going to make fall in love with football all over again, and he'll prove the doubters wrong. That's just another example of what's gone wrong.
It's interesting, but you mentioned, Colm, you mentioned Hickey, because I'd never seen this. I didn't even know who he was until we went to this game against Betis, the friendly. And I thought he might be Irish, but I just never heard of him. With a name like Hickey, but anyway, he wasn't. But 16 million quid, he looks like a brilliant signing. Let me tell you, he was excellent. And, they pick him up. They do make some really good under the radar signings that sort of players don't really, and they're still without Ethan Pinnock. So, they've brought in Ben Mee. They'll be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, we should talk about Brentford. Let's talk about Brentford more, right? Because they also signed Mikkel Damsgaard from Sampdoria, and he was the guy who lit up the Euros for Denmark. They're getting these moneyball signings. Then Josh De Silva back, number 10, scored a great goal against Leicester. He's had 18 months of turmoil with his hip injury. Let's focus on Brentford here.
Okay, that's the story.
That's the biggest. The story here is Brentford.
Yeah. So Brentford versus Manchester United, 5:30 on Saturday evening. Full-blown crisis if Man United lose that. Would you pick Ronaldo from the start, David? Even if he's not fit, even though he says he's fit, but the manager thinks he isn't, what do you do?
Well, Martial, I don't know. I think it's... I mean, I guess if there wasn't talk of Rashford going, it looks like, I don't know whether he had talks with PSG, whether that's actually true. I mean, is that factual now?
I don't know. That's mad.
So often.
What are PSG doing? Have they not watched any football for the last 2 years? Because he scored that one penalty against them, they're like, we can fix him.
2. That's enough.
They seem to have some good players at PSG at the moment up front. What?
Well, Rashford is a good player. That's the whole institutional problem.
But they already have. They're well stocked in that area.
Do you know who we should talk about more? Jadon Sancho.
Yes.
Well, David, what do you make of Jadon Sancho at Manchester United so far? What would be your assessment of him?
I think 2 things, right? If he starts Ronaldo, I think he'd be loath to take him off because, that creates another issue. So he's kind of like, does he leave him on the bench and then bring him on, and he makes an impact like Nunez or something like that, or otherwise, he squeezes Rashford into the team, and I don't know what he'd do out wide. Maybe he might play Elanga or somebody like that. But Sancho just looks like a shadow of his former self. I know that's a phrase that is, but I mean, I work with a lot of people who've, German football and worked in it for years. I mean, he's just so far off the player that he was when he signed. He's here. I don't know if it reminds me of how Dan James ended at United, in that United signed him because all he did, he was pacey, direct and really confident. And then he just seemed to lose that with the, playing for such a big club and making mistakes, and your every move is analysed, and he just seemed to deteriorate. And Dan James just said, I wish I'd have tried to be the player that I was when I first joined. I don't know whether that's the same with Sancho. It's what it looks like.
Are Manchester United going to win this game?
Oh, I'd imagine they would. But if you look at what Brighton did at the start of their game, they got the ball, booted it straight onto the 2 centre halves. Yeah, Martinez, who's a smaller one, which is exactly what Brentford should do. They went and pressed. Dalot not even looking the right way when he receives the ball, and it'll be all action from Brentford. And as I said, I saw them last season against Liverpool, and they're outstanding against the top teams. And as long as they play that way, as long as they don't try and out-football, I think they could out-football United, but as long as they also mix it up and go direct, they've got something that United don't, the ability to play along the ground and go in the air, whereas United don't have that either. I mean, the front part of the pitch for United at the weekend was tiny.
OK, on Sunday, Forest against West Ham and Chelsea against Spurs. Forest have been really, really busy in the transfer window. It's just hard to know if that team is going to gel fast enough for them to be able to make an impact early. But they're taking the risk that buying big early is worth the outcome if you manage to stay in the division. What's your instinct about how well or otherwise that's gone for them so far?
Well, I think I really like the manager. I think he's a terrific one. I think the Newcastle game was always going to be tough, but look, that amount of signings will take time to gel. They've backed him. Make no mistake, they've given him the money. By all intents and purposes, obviously you got Jesse Lingard going up against his former team, who was so good. He was so good for West Ham. And these are the sort of games I think they'd want to be competitive in. The Newcastle ones, the West Ham ones, but are they at that level yet? I think they're the top 8 teams. They could be the top 8 teams in the Premier League. Whereas I think, let's see how they get on against your Evertons and other teams like that. I think, Bournemouths and teams like that. But I think they're going to find it tough against West Ham because, West Ham, I think, are a very established, really good team. Albeit they had the worst game possible last week against Man City.
Yeah.
Which was like, hey, let me tell you, that was like watching Brentford against Betis. It was like watching, if you're a West Ham fan, you'd want your money back. It was awful because you never saw the ball. I mean, they never saw the ball. It was a complete write-off. It looked like a complete write-off from the minute. And if you'd have spent 2 hours getting there, 2 hours in there, 2 hours getting home, you'd be like, what was the point in that? It was a complete waste of time.
Right off because Manchester City were so good, or because West Ham were poor?
Well, it's a kind of combination. But, nowadays, teams are going to, even at 1-0 down, I was working on the game and I was asked, will West Ham change anything? No, of course they won't. They're not going to change anything, because if they do, they'll just lose by 4 or 5. And that's going to be the case this season, right? Teams are going to go against Man City and they may as well just have a week off, rest their players, and if they get beat, as long as they don't get beat by 4 or 5, then it's a good day. Only losing 2-0 for West Ham was a good day for them.
Look, no one's saying it, right? But Liverpool dropping 2 points on the opening day of the season, that's a disaster for the league title race. Like, it actually is. They're behind already. It's going to be ages before they catch up.
Well, look, this is only the City side, right? They had 2 pre-season games. They had 2 pre-season games. And they played this game like it was another pre-season game in complete control. It took them a while to get the breakthrough, but once they did, and West Ham had to come out a tiny little bit, it could have been anything. So, I mean, what are they going to be like when they, in a couple of weeks' time? Because it's almost like they're playing their way into form now. Yeah. Whereas other teams have 6 or 7. I mean, Liverpool were putting on a game the other night, weren't they, for the lads that didn't play? It was almost like Pep was so confident in that and how they're going to do things that he's using some of these games almost as like a warm-up.
Yeah. I don't know if that Liverpool-Villa game behind closed doors ended up happening. It was supposed to, and then I heard it had been cancelled, but I'm not sure. Maybe something did happen in the end. Yeah. Chelsea-Spurs is definitely the standout fixture of the weekend. Right? This game kicks off at 4:30. Vinnie Perth alongside Stephen Doyle on commentary for us. You can watch it on Sky Sports at 4:30. And, of course, the football kickoff is with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. I've been really impressed by the job that Conte has done ever since the Burnley game, where he effectively threatened to resign that night. He's managed to get everything he wants. There was a piece in one of the papers during the week about the signings and how they're all basically 6 foot and over. He's building a team of aggressive, athletic giants who all have excellent footballing ability. Their front players are among the best collection of front players in world football. And yet, the Chelsea manager seems to have an owner who's backing him and getting him what he wants, and they're on the verge of making incredible signings. They're on the verge of it. They haven't done it yet. So this is very delicately poised.
Yeah, I mean, Conte is... we saw the images pre-season, right, where they're doing however many lengths of the pitch and lads killed over, getting sick and stuff. It's almost, old school pre-season that, we used to do 20-odd years ago, but this is Antonio Conte doing this, and make no mistake, those players will have worked. I mean, they would have been used to working hard with Pochettino, but this is, I think, gone up another level. And the way they've started, obviously Conte going back to Chelsea, they could have scored even more against Southampton, who looked all over the place at times. 2 changes at half-time for them. This has got all the makings of a classic.
What if Chelsea were to add the players they've been linked with? I know it's ridiculous because nobody ever adds all the players they've been linked with, but Chelsea don't get linked with as many players as, say, Man United. But you add Fofana to that team, you add Aubameyang to that team, and you add Frankie de Jong to that team. They're like one of the best sides in the world at that stage.
Yeah, hell of a battle. This is basically 3rd against 4th in the Premier League. Already confirmed this weekend, Chelsea versus Spurs. They are the next tier below the top 2 tiers.
I think that these
You're about to tell me they're going to take over?
Well, I think that I don't think anybody's going to beat City, but I think that they could certainly challenge Liverpool for finishing 2nd this year.
Who? Chelsea?
Both of these teams.
Yeah. It's actually genuinely fascinating, this match. Spurs have only won at Stamford Bridge once in 32 years, but this could be twice. They've never looked so good. Is this the best Spurs squad on paper the Premier League has seen? They were very good under Harry Redknapp for a while when they had genuine width with Gareth Bale and Aaron Lennon. They had real fluid play under Redknapp. It was kind of gung-ho, but this seems like way above this.
Yeah, you have to be careful though, right? Because do you remember the amount of times I've been on here and we were talking about Gavin Bazunu and I said when he was going to Southampton, I said, well, just be careful because I think Ralph Hasenhüttl will be one of the next managers to lose his job, and I will stand by that. And I don't think you can read too much into how Tottenham did against Southampton necessarily. how Southampton played, I think most teams would have beaten them. Tottenham would have easily, overcome many teams. So it's gonna be a lot harder, and that's only the opening day. But yeah, I'd agree. Look, they're very, very, very strong. Last season the two wing backs I thought were pretty disappointing for them. As it was this season, maybe a little bit more work pre-season into them. They're getting in a lot better. Sessegnon always in round the back post. They looked. Bentancur, I think, is an excellent addition. And look, Kulusevski's got his goal, but Son and Kane are on a different level, I think, to everyone else in that Spurs team. And actually, Son was a bit greedy, right? Did you see where he dribbled and dribbled? He could have laid it on a plate for Kane the other against Southampton. I think it was in the sort of first half. But other than that, yes, I mean, I'd probably say they're up amongst one of their strongest squads. But I still think there's a little bit of room to go there. I still think they can improve. I prefer Doherty to Emerson Royale. I'd have him in the team. We'll see how Sessegnon goes over a full season. Will he get a full season, or will Perisic usurp him? But they've certainly got the strength in depth. That's for sure.
Jed Spence, another option too, at right wing back. So many options.
Do you not think though, Colm, that was strange, because he said that he wasn't his signing?
Yeah, weird.
Well, maybe he's just already like, just in case this doesn't work out. I'm a bit unsure about you, but the rest I'm unsure about.
Well, I mean, but you sign a young lad because he's young, right? But I mean, he didn't come on, did he?
No.
He brought on Matt instead. Imagine the light change.
Imagine if you're Jed Spence and you see that.
You're like,
what did I do?
Well, maybe that's his way of dealing with Jed Spence. I think you need to be written off for you to play well. Maybe. I think the biggest standout for Spurs is that they scored 4 goals and neither Son or Kane scored. And that's a big progress from what they have been in the last couple of years, where they've been massively over-reliant on the two boys. Yeah,
possibly. I mean, look, they've got Basuma as well, who didn't even come off the bench. Yep. So they are very, very, very strong. I mean, the only thing, anyway.
Give me a prediction.
Spurs win 1-0.
Right. A little bit of history being made. Okay, the last game is Monday night. Liverpool versus Palace. Kickoffs at 8 o'clock on Sky Sports. It's not a crisis, obviously, if Liverpool drop more points, but they're not coming back from 5 points behind or 4 points behind, are they? Against Man City at this stage, with the Terminator playing up front for them. They've got to win this game. That's whatever happens. Like, I don't care about the performance. Klopp is saying, just get out there and get a scratchy 1-0 win, lads, and we'll get up and running. Right, David Connolly? Nothing matters here apart from a win.
No, that's right. I mean, look, there is not a lot that's going to separate if it's going to be Liverpool, Man City again, right? So every point absolutely counts. Say the Community Shield, you look at how Liverpool played in that, and I thought it was wise starting Núñez again on the bench. I thought he could have had another couple of goals. I thought he tried a little flick before he scored, the little flick that actually he should have got a connection on with just a simple finish. He would have put it in the back of the net. But, I mean, if you're playing Fulham, and they would have seen a lot of them from last season, any ball in the box, people say about Mitrovic, this, that and the other. Any ball in the box, he is a real threat. He's hard to handle. But, even on the floor, he was decent. But I think Fulham surprised them, no doubt. They surprised them with how they played. But I think they'll overcome Palace come Monday.
Yeah, it'll be pressurised enough if City win, as we expect them to do over the course of the weekend too. So very good. That is this week's episode of the Football Kickoff with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. So we will see you next Friday around about 11:30. Colm, thanks. David, thanks. Best of luck.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Folks.
The Football Kickoff
with Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.